Welcome, junk journalers, to my interactive pocket folio Create With Me journal tutorial. I hope you're really going to love today's video. So come along and join in. I'm going to be making some lovely interactive folios that fold out to create beautiful writing spaces. Also, they have a pocket inside them. I'm going to pretty much get straight into it, and we don't need journal header today. Today we're just going to use the body of the pianola rolls. So let's waste no time and let's get straight to it. So first up, I've chosen a beautiful chocolatey pianola roll. So let's start with our first measurements. So I need this to be 10 inches from bottom to the top. So I'll just mark 10 inches. And 10 inches, and I'll slide that across with my Stanley knife. Even when you iron them, sometimes they do bounce back. Okay, so I'll just get rid of that ginormous pile. That was a huge roll. So we're left with a piece that's 10 inches long. Now I want you to flip it over, and I want you to find the center of the page. So if you can find the center point and just put a mark. You might just have a regular ruler, so just do your calculations. I'm cheating. I use this center ruler which has a 0 in the middle, and I found my center. The next thing I'd like you to do is measure down the side of the page, and it needs to be 4 2/8. So 4 2/8, and just put a little line there, and on the other side 4 2/8 on the other side. Then if you could join up that center dot with your measurement on the outside, you can rule a line if you like, or you can just simply cut it with your knife, whatever you feel more confident doing. If you need to rule it up first, and then cut. Just some light slices through that, and then I'm going to go to the other way, to the other mark that we just made. I'm going to slice this off, and that's sliced off nicely. So the next thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to make a fold mark from the edge piece here inwards, and it's going to be 3.5 inches in. So I'm going to get my scoreboard, and I'm going to score this in 3.5. Find my score line, go down 3.5. Do it lightly because pianola paper is a little bit fragile and you may cut through it even though you're just scoring it. And 3.5. So I've scored that 3.5 in from the edge, 3.5 in from the edge. The next thing I would like to do is to score this 7.5 inches along. So put your point at the edge, because I want to score a line across here that's going to be 7.5. Here we go, so 7.5. So what I'd like to do next is line this with some music paper. And this, of course, isn't going to fit the whole width, which is fine. We don't need it to. One thing, when you are sticking this music paper down, you do need to make sure your point's on the actual paper before you put it down. you need the point covered. Okay, so we're going to do that next, is to get a piece of music paper. This one's like a nice and creamy colour. And I always look on the music paper and see if there's a word that I'd like on it. This one's got hornpipe from the water music. This one's got minuet in G. So minuet in G fits really nicely. Let's see, hornpipe, that might work as well. So I might use the hornpipe side. So I'll flip that over and I'm going to put some glue on. Now I always use this catalyst tool, this silicone one. I just find it so great to spread glue so quickly. And this glue is getting empty. I'll have to get a new glue. Won't be a moment. Not very full, that one. This one is, there we go. Use your glue of choice. I just love this Aleene's tacky glue. It's just my favourite. I just put a really nice coat on. And then I'm going to use this catalyst tool, and this just spreads it and it doesn't grab the paper, which I love. So, and it's silicone, so it cleans up so easily. So I'm just going to spread glue everywhere, nice covering. And the glue glistens on the paper so I can see where I'm missing glue. And it's not going to be thick and bubbly, so this is going to just give a really nice thin coat and be perfect for the pianola paper to stick on. This Aleene's glue, in Australia, it's pretty cheap really. One of those tubes, I think I got the 2 tubes from Amazon for $13. And I don't buy it very often. It seems to last, even though it looks like I'm using a lot. It is fabulous. Okay. So then this is sort of stick once, you can't move it once you start. So I do need to make sure that that point is on the paper. So my next thing I do with my favourite tool, you can use a credit card, like an old credit card, or you could use your bone folder. This doesn't drag the paper and it's really quite nice. And it gets out all your bubbles, sticks beautifully. There's no glue on it. It's just perfect every time. You can buy them at most art stores too. I'll put a link in the description, what exactly it is. A link in the description of the video. I'm just going to wipe that over in case we've got any glue anywhere. Quick wipe and it's clean. The next thing I'd like to do is just trim this up. So I'm going to use my scissors and give this just a quick trim. And then I'm thinking I'm going to leave this piece. I'll just wipe the bit of glue off it because I've got a feeling I'm going to see if I can shabby it a bit so it's peering over the edge of what we're making. So I've got those lovely fold lines, so we can just follow those again and fold those over and make sure we're following that fold line and not the pianola fold line. There we go. These vents in the paper sometimes act as a fold line where you don't want them to. And then I'm folding the words on top. We're not going to really see the words this time, but you can see, we can see hornpipe now through the top. And then we can fold up the bottom. So what I'd like to do is fold that music down that we just used, and we can see there's a nice music note there. And what I was thinking of doing is just tearing along, and I do have a new ruler actually that I bought just for this purpose. It's a really long Deckle ruler which I've been searching for forever, There's lots of these really tiny little Deckle rulers about, but I wanted a really long one, and I was really quite happy, quite excited I found this. So this is a long deckled ruler, which is going to be perfect, because those little ones, you sort of have to start and stop tearing the whole time. So this one, let's see, first rip, haven't used it before, let's see what this one's like. And this one I found on Amazon. I looked everywhere. The ones from China and Temu and all of those places, they're only this big. So when you order them, look how big they are. They're so tiny. And that looks like that'll work quite well. Let's see what happens when we fold this all back up. And the music actually is up the right way too. So that's going to look quite cute. The only thing is, I might just have to straighten this just a wee bit. It's just a tiny bit off. Just want this to not show when I fold it. There we go. We've got quite a lot of bulk here at the back too. So I'm thinking we may just use our ruler and snip some of that bulk away, as long as we've got some covering that centre bit, because we want this centre bit covered on the other edge, but we probably don't need this bulk. I'm just going to be mindful where the centre is, so it's about here, and just get rid of a little bit of this bulk. And by ruling it, that way we're not going to make any mistakes. Let's get rid of a tiny bit of bulk. Let's have a look. So this is where we're up to now. I want to fold this flap down. I don't want it to quite touch here. What I'd like to do is make a little tab. So our master's music tabs are this shape. So what I did was I got one of my music headers. I'll just grab one off camera if I've got a loose one here. Let's have a look. Okay, so what I did was I traced this with tracing paper, the shape of the tab, because I thought that actually would look really cute to make our own tabs. So that's that shape there. And then what I did was I ran through some of this thick card through a embossing folder. So this is a nice Anna Griffith one. And I'm going to trace this out, and that's going to become my Pianola tab for here. But I don't want to fold this down before I work out how long this tab will make it. So I'm going to just simply trace around this, cut it out, and then we'll work out how big that fold needs to be. So that is going to stick on here. That's looking quite pretty. Then what I'd like to do is make a circle punch and punch this out, and this is going to be the hole for where the string goes and attaches here to tie it to. So I will need 2 of these. The first part of the circle would be glued down, and the second one will go on top and not be glued. I'm just going to do 2 of these. They're quite decorative once you've run that through with the embossing folder. And then these will go on here. This will go on here. So if I look at this, I think I'd really like this to fold. It'll just need to fold below this triangle where it joins. So it needs to come down half a centimetre, I don't know, what's that, 2/8 of an inch. So I'm going to line that up on my board and pick somewhere, and I'd like hornpipe still left in. So I'm just going to run this score line. It's just under 6, so it's 5 and 7/8 from here to here. But all I want you to do is look where that fold is and just do it below, and that's going to be our fold line. And I'll fold that down, and then I'll finish with the scoreboard, because by the time we put that on there, and then we have this here, and this is going to have a rivet through it with some thread. I think that's going to look quite great. So my next step's going to be giving this a little bit of tone. So I like to go around everything with some distress ink. So my usual one is tea dye distress ink, and I'm going to go round everything. I may even fast forward this for you. So those are looking really great. Before we glue them down, we need to put a rivet in here. So I'm going to use my crocodile tool, and I'm just going to put a circle where I'd like the hole to go through first. And we're going to make a hole in the centre. So I've got a hole, and then these 2 dots I do need to line up and put a dot in the middle. Because even eyeballing it, I don't seem to get the dot exactly in the middle where I want it to be. So I'm just using this board also to give me an idea where I'd like that to be. So then I can use my crocodile, and I'll use my little hole on the other side, and I'll line that dot up in the middle. And then those will go on here with a brad. So I've got my hole puncher here, and I'm going to cut out just a little decorative back to cover the brad once I bend it behind. So again, I need to measure the centre of this. Got so many tools out. Okay, so I need to measure the centre of this one. Let me get the centre ruler in the right place. And it's just about here. We measure, is that where we want it to go? That looks fine. And I'm going to use my little punch with the tiny hole. Open this back up. That's why we haven't glued it. We've got quite a bit to do before we glue it. I'm going to line that up. Put a hole through. And I've bought some darker ink out, and I thought maybe just a touch of darker ink around these, because I really can't see the lighter ink on this darker paper. So maybe this darker ink, which is the vintage photo, which I used to use for everything years ago. So I've got a bit of vintage photo on that one. This one you're not going to see. It's going to be behind this. So I do like to glue my first one down, first circle down, but not the top one, only this base one, because we want to be able to thread the string through the other one. So I've got that one on. So I've glued that on. We're just going to place that on top, and then we're going to use a brad. And I'll choose one that's size appropriate. That one looks quite good. And then we're going to open this up. Maybe with my fingers, I might need my knife. Get rid of one of my 40 tools. There we go. I'm going to go down the centre. And I've bent that over. And this is where I talk about using these just to cover the edge. That's actually probably the right size. So I'll just put a dot of glue on it. You're not going to see it, but it's just hopefully going to stop anything catching on those prongs. So that's the idea, is so nothing gets hooked on those prongs. And we push that down. And we'll just centre these. Okay, and we're on to the next step. I'll just clean up, be back. So the next thing I need to do is to put one of these rivets through the end here, and I'm going to use my crocodile tool. So I just place that in the end. Then I'm going to get my tool. It tells me on the top here that the top bit goes that way. So just put that on there, and it tells me on the bottom base. And then I'm just going to give it a squeeze. And that's simply how it's done. And then I'm going to glue this on the top. So I'll just bend it down, apply the glue. Don't need it on this tab bit because that's not going to be attached to any paper. So I've got a nice bit of glue on there. And then I'm going to smooch that down. I'll probably line it up with something to make sure it's straight. So on the grid lines, everything is straight. Flip it over, make sure it's in the centre. I think that pretty much looks centered. So now all I'm going to simply do is use some wax thread. I'm usually partial to the darker colour, so I'll get some of that going. And I would like it to go from there and then wrap around. So I don't think we'll need a very long bit. And poke that through and tie a knot of some sort. And there we go, just a simple knot. I'll trim that off. And then that is going to that top loose one that we left loose and tie off. Now one thing I'd like to add on here is I'd like to add a charm up here, I'm thinking, or a charm on the tail. So I get all these circles and all these other little pieces that I add on to my journals from, you can get them from Temu or AliExpress. Hopefully that's going to zoom in for you. This is going to go on the tail of here, and I'm going to add a charm, and it's just going to press on. They're a bit tricky. So what happens is, I'll show you up here a bit closer. Tricky little things. This is going to go in there, and those two sides are going to close over it, And then the ring part will have a smaller ring go through the top, and I'll attach. We'll now crimp the other side over. All these little things just add really lovely detail. I'll bring that up nice and close. Hopefully you can see that's squished down. And I've got a little tail there of the string, which I can just trim back a little bit to get access to that circle. Now, I'd like to put a charm on the end, is what I'm thinking. So I've got just a small ring, and then I was thinking this sweet little key. I'll thread that through, and that will then wind through, and it has a lovely little key. So let's finish this off, and we're going to decorate it slightly and make a couple things. So one of the first things I'd like to do is open it back up. So don't glue it down as yet, because we don't want this glued down until we finish doing a little bit of decorating. So what I've done is I've torn strips of pianola paper, probably just under an inch wide, I suppose. Let's get a measure out. Probably about an inch wide. So I've torn strips of pianola paper, and then I've just put some distressing ink all along the edges, and then I've folded it along. And you can make a fair few of these and just use little clips and clip them into place overnight, or just even iron it down if you wish. And that's formed a really lovely little ruffle that I'm just going to glue under there. I'd also like to add some lace. I'm thinking along the bottom. I was thinking lace or rickrack. Let's see if I put my rickrack here. I think it's called rickrack, yeah. Here we go. So either just a bit of rickrack or a little bit of lace underneath, or maybe both. We'll see how we go. I quite like the lace underneath, so I'll glue the lace down first. Put a line. The next bit, I'm just going to glue this little bit of ruffle underneath. All things that we've made out of pianola paper and things that you probably have some music paper. There we go. And that's looking quite cute. And then we can glue down this top piece then. On top of that little bit of pianola paper. And this is that Arlene's tacky glue. It dries really quickly. It's really tacky, and I just find it's the best glue. If I get any of it anywhere it shouldn't be, I just grab a baby wipe and I just wipe over super quick over the surface, and I just grab a little tissue and I'll wipe that wetness from it away. If I've been too generous, I do have little needle nose bottles, but I haven't got those out at the moment. So that's that bit done. That's looking quite good. Now, underneath here, I haven't got it very even, and I do like everything to be really even. So you've got the choice of just finding a bit of lace or a bit of rickrack or something that you'd like to use. I did find a little bobbin of, someone had tattered this, so I thought that actually looks quite sweet. So I thought a bit of this tattered frilly bit I thought will work quite well for me. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue down. There we go. And I bought this old Stampin' Up punch that makes really lovely shapes. So I'm going to punch some of these words out of the pianola paper, is my idea. So all the words on the pianola paper, I like the words like dear and true. This has my loved, dear again, dreams. The best idea is to actually have it double-sided. So this one's one of my pieces that I've double-sided with pianola paper. And I'm just going to cut that out midway. I'll just line it up in front of me. So the word dear, and I might do the word true. Just have to trim this a little bit down so the punch fits in. So any punch you have, or maybe you have a die that you'd like to use. That could be round. There we go. So next thing I need to do is these need to be quite firm. I find that if I do back it with brown, dark brown, it does turn out quite well. I've made some other little ones here beside me. Excuse my dog coughing. Here we go. So a bit of brown and a bit of black in the middle, and they're really quite sturdy tags. So here's some other little ones that I've made, and you can top them with some resin or some glossy accents. So I was thinking something like that on there, but I don't want the tab on it, so I'll make some more. Now you'll have seen me do this before with the edges of the lace. So I like to keep my edges of lace, and I like to make them a little bit shabby. So even a little pair of scissors, preferably what I call a quick unpick, which I will just grab. I'm just going to start snipping in, so a seam ripper, and I'm just going to put that in, and I'm going to shabby these. I might even make the pieces shorter, but I'll start with them long. And it's dried for a little while, so I have let it dry, that tacky glue. If you use something else, maybe you need to leave it dry half a day before you attack it. But we really want to pull this and give it a little bit of texture. It's probably a wee bit long, so I'll just give it a little trim, and then we'll get that shabbiness of old lace coming in a little bit. And give it a bit of texture. Okay, so a little bit shabby. And once these are dry, then I'm going to place it there, but we'll come back to that. I'd like to move on with the next one. So we're going to use the same folds, and I'll just probably speed this up a little bit, and we'll decorate the next one. So what I've done here is simply traced around the circle lid from my glue bottle, and that's going to create the round shape for my tag, and I've just extended it so that fits perfectly. And after gluing it on, I've simply trimmed off the little round bits that are left hanging over the edge, just to give it a really neat finish. And then just remember to ink all your edges of your pages. So this one here, I do have a bit of an idea. I see a lot of creators creating hearts for their projects, and they're in printables, and I thought, well, why not make a real heart, not a printable heart? So I've grabbed a piece of old music paper, and I need to make a little bit of a template for it. So I've just got a heart punch. You could just print out any heart or freehand a heart. So that will be my template. And I just need to make music template of a heart that's slightly larger. So if I just put that on by half and then sketch around that, that's going to be our heart shape. So I'll just snip that out, and then all you're going to do is make smaller hearts in increments, and then that will be your heart base, and then you're going to make lots of other different little hearts inside, and that will then end up looking something like this. So this is what I'll be using. Put some lace underneath here. So perhaps some of this. Then we will punch out 2 circles out of this. We'll go on there. And that will fold down. So this one, because I'm using a heart, I think I'd like it to be a little bit more frilly. So I'm thinking of using some frillier lace. So I'll just fold this back up and we'll have a look what a bit of more frilly lace does to it before I tear some paper off. So that's starting to look quite feminine. So I might actually trim this up and get rid of that edge bit, use a bit of distressing ink on it. And this bit of lace needs to go underneath. Just zip off those side ones. And I might shabby the edges, so I'll just leave that little bit extra. I'll wait till it dries and then I'm going to shabby them right up, but I'll So I'm simply here going to add a little bit of lace that's going to go under the little reinforced dots that we're going to wind that string around. So I'm just going to measure them out like last time, pop a hole through the whole lot, glue it all down, and then that's going to be ready for our string to wrap around to seal it. Because it's in a really odd space, I've also used my giant crocodile. So this one's a crocodile, but I think it's called a big bite. It means you can move it to the center of the page and punch holes in the center of your journals, center of your spines. It's a very handy tool, and I haven't bought it out much lately. So perfect for this. If you don't have one, just use your awl that you would use to punch your signature holes. That will work perfectly too. So I'm just going to choose a brad and pop that through, and that's going to anchor. So I'm going to move on to the last one. So this one, I'm going to put it differently on the page. So what's going to happen is this one is going to be like this on your page. When you open your book, it'll look like this. So it just looks like a square, and then it's going to flip up, and this here we're going to cut off with some pinking shears. So we have our envelope, and we're going to stick it on the page here, and then it'll flip up for us. So what I'd like to do is to decorate the back here first. So what I have done is I've embossed some pianola paper, so it has this lovely raised print on it, and I've used my tea dye ink, and I've just simply, using a very, very flat motion, gone over the top just to bring that raised pianola paper to the forefront. And we're going to use this to back the photo. So then all I've done is I've used my trusty ruler, roughly measure where I'd like to tear, and I'll just tear that pianola paper off into about the shape that I'd like to use. And just have to hold it really firmly down for this ruler to work. There we go, and I'll just tear down the side, and then I'll ink it up a little bit more. Might get rid of this side here. And that's that little poodle snoring. It's having her nap. There we go, and this needs to straighten up a wee bit. And then I just want to tear down the other side. Be smarter if I tore the big side, but anyway, we'll get there. There we go, and the bottom. Just roughly eyeball that where we'd like it to be. So that would be the base piece that you'd use here. The next thing that I do is just go around the edges. I'd lie it down and just scoot around the edges and just bring those edges in. Maybe scoot a little bit more over the patterns. You're not going to see it because the photo is going to block it, but it will give it some definition. So I did already do this once, but my camera decided to stop recording halfway through, which is hilarious. So that would be on top of here. Then the next thing that I would do is, you've seen me use this cicada paper in a lot of my other projects. So what I've done is I've used texture paste and a stencil. I'll do a video in the next few weeks about my layering techniques and different papers that I use. But this is just simply a stencil, bit of texture paste, left to dry, and then I have torn a piece out, and that is going to go on the top. Then I've got a cabinet card that I'd like to use, and I use antique music paper quite a bit, and sometimes they're way past their use by date and they're really failing and they look pretty terrible. So what I do is I do use my ruler and I pull off the little bits that have got beautiful typography or writing, and bits that I feel that I can use in my journals. So this one here I think would look really quite lovely here. And then I've also got some others that I might use throughout this project. The other thing that I've done is I've scanned this one in, as well as some of these other elements, and I've put them in a document, and I'll load them up to Etsy. So if you want to use some of these really lovely old elements in some of your work, have a look at what I've uploaded. It'll also include some of the documents that I've used in some of the pages in this signature wrap as well, only the ones that are antique and out of copyright. So I've uploaded this shape just to make it super easy for you as a little template. And then we'll get down to perhaps gluing this down. I'm thinking it needs a little bit of white also because it's quite dark against this, so we need something just to lift the base perhaps. That may just give it a bit of layer. Don't need much, can just cut off a little strip and have that poking out. No one's going to see that, you just need a little bit for around the sides. You can even scoot around and cut that other bit out that you're not going to use and use it on another section. Then we'll just tease the fibres so it looks a bit different. You could also use a bit of lace, a bit of broader Anglaise lace perhaps, but this will just break up too much of the same colour happening. So let's have a look. So just that tiny bit of white, and then we're layering. And then this pocket here, I'm thinking it probably needs firming up, so I'm just going to attach that to a little bit of cardboard, just so it's a little bit more stable perhaps for that photo to go in and out. Another thing I'm thinking of is perhaps if I do just a little stitch with the sewing machine. So first of all, I'll glue these down and then I'd pop out to the sewing machine. Just need a tiny little bit of glue just to hold that for when I'm sewing. There we go. So I'll let that dry first. Then I'm going to back this onto some cardboard. I just think simply this corner with a bit of stitching would probably be all that it needs. Probably needs something a little bit more white too. So I'm thinking, what can we use on this? Let's go into the lace box and see what we can find. I'm thinking it needs something else on this. Let's see, one of these perhaps. Underneath absolutely everything across the bottom, just to peek out just a little bit. So I'm thinking that lifts it. And then this is really lovely. Bit of broader Anglaise, some insertion lace. I'm thinking of that perhaps on the top as a tab, or perhaps a little bit of grungy tape measure might even look quite good. So perhaps a little bit of this tape measure on the top might actually do quite well. I'll move it down so I've got enough length to put it in there. I think that would actually look quite great. Don't think that needs to go all the way across either. I think that's just offset would look really good. So I'll tatter this a little bit and we'll just glue that down here. I really like the curly threes on old tape measures. I love the threes, the typography from that era. So I'm thinking we might even use that 3. And there we go. And then we can snip this off. And that can all go back into the lace box for another day. This eyelet's long enough. I'm going to put that eyelet through the board first. Notch that in the top. Simply Give it a good press, and that's going to tuck in there. So I'm off just to simply stitch this, and I'll be back. So back from the sewing machine, I'll just glue this one on, and then we'll flip it over and work on the other side. I think he's looking quite great. We're going to remember that this is going to be glued down on the page, and that's when you flip it up and this is what you're going to see. So we'll just scoot through and fast forward these few bits. So this is just cutting out that tab bit again, and then just remember to go round with your distress ink around absolutely everything. That is going to glue down onto our book. Then you'll be able to open it up as usual if you'd like, and you can hide something in there, some old photos or a postcard or a document. And we just need to put our little rivet here and a bit of lace, and we're almost there. Okay, so that's that bit of lace done. So we need to put a rivet in here as per normal. I need to glue the bottom one on only, and I've measured out the centre. I've checked where the dot is. I've made sure it's going to go through the piano paper for a bit of stability. So I'll glue this one on here. Just simply punch a hole through. So little container of brads, and I'm going to pop one through the top one, into the bottom one, turn it over, flatten it out. And this is where sometimes you can also put something over the top if you wish, so it doesn't catch on things on the inside, or just leave it as it is. We need to install, that's going to be pasted on the page, so when you lift it up, that's what you'll see. And then we just need some sort of little tie to go through here. So I've chosen some little keys for this one. Okay, and the last thing that I'd like to do is to pop one of these on. I think that'll look really lovely there. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. I'd love to see you again next week. We're going to make something fabulous together again. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and it's something different. It's sort of like ephemera building, I suppose you could say. So we've got 3 totally different ones to use in different albums, and I think they'll look really great. A lot of detail, interactive, some really pretty pieces on them. So I'm pleased with how they turned out. Please let me know what you thought, and if you need to find anything or want to know any more further information about what I used, please drop me a comment or a message, and I'm more than happy to answer.